5 years ago, he left his family and disappeared into silence. Now he returns facing the woman he once loved and the child he never knew. Can love heal deep wounds? Is there a second chance for this family, or will the past always haunt them? In today's story, you'll witness an emotional journey of a father trying to make amends, a mother struggling with forgiveness, and a little girl who only knows how to love unconditionally. Don't miss the touching moments, the decisions that change lives, and the ultimate question, can they start over? Hit subscribe today so you don't miss inspiring stories like this. Join us on this journey of change and healing, and share this story with those who need to hear it. The afternoon sun cast its warm glow over New York City, making the skyscrapers of Manhattan gleam, reflecting the golden rays on their glass facades. Michael Carter, the CEO of one of the largest financial companies in the industry, stepped out of his towering office building. His light blue suit was tailored perfectly, his black hair neatly groomed, and his piercing blue eyes exuded determination. Michael always appeared flawless, never letting emotions show, never revealing any weakness. He was a man of business, living amidst numbers, deals, and strategic plans. He was the epitome of success that everyone dreamed of. Yet if anyone were to look at his life, they would unmistakably notice a deep, cold loneliness, a wound he had tried desperately to hide. Michael couldn't remember the last time he had taken time for himself, couldn't recall what it felt like to be loved or needed. Work consumed him entirely, and that was how he kept himself from confronting the unforgettable memories. Only a year ago, Michael had suffered a devastating failure in a relationship, and it was the biggest shock of his life. He had walked away from Kate, the woman he had once loved. When Kate told him she was pregnant, Michael didn't know what to do except walk away. He feared he would become a terrible father, just like the father he had always despised. And so he abandoned Kate and the unborn child, believing it was the better choice for all three of them. The sun shone brightly in the deep blue sky over Manhattan, but Michael felt a coldness surrounding him. He stepped out of the building, his expensive phone in hand, skillfully avoiding the rushing crowds on the street. He passed by cafes, luxury stores, and bustling streets. But inside, everything seemed like a faded picture. The feeling of being lost in his own city wasn't new to Michael. He had achieved success, but he was alone. And behind the bright lights of Manhattan, he still felt like a ship without a harbor. He didn't like the chaos of the streets, but he couldn't separate himself from it. A gentle breeze blew through, tousling his hair, yet it couldn't change the coldness in his heart. He often thought about Kate, about the old days. Though he had tried to forget, her images would flood back to him every time he walked through the familiar streets. The long afternoons when they strolled through parks, the times they sat together in small cafes, and the mornings when they woke up beside each other. Those memories were like a smoldering fire, never fading away. Today, like every other day, he was busy with work. But something felt wrong. There was an unease, an unsettling feeling that something was about to happen, something that would disrupt the perfect life he had built. And then, not long after stepping out of the office, as he was busy on the phone, a strong gust of wind suddenly blew through. The papers in his hand flew everywhere, swirling like white birds in the breeze. Michael furrowed his brow hurriedly, bending down to start picking up the scattered papers. Each sheet flew away quickly. He tried to gather them, but there were too many papers caught in the strong wind. Suddenly, he heard a soft voice beside him. "I'll help you pick them up." Michael was startled and turned to look. Before him stood a little girl around 5 years old, with brown hair braided into two pigtails, her wide green eyes gleaming with determination and trust. She sat down beside him and quickly began gathering the papers, treating it like an important task. She wore a white t-shirt and denim skirt, her bare knees brushing lightly against the pavement as she bent down. Michael looked at the girl, a strange feeling welling up inside him. He had never seen a child like her, a child who dared to step up and help a stranger without hesitation. She didn't just assist, she worked with a focus and diligence that adults sometimes lacked. Michael lifted his head and gently said, "Thank you." The girl smiled brightly, an innocent and warm smile, and handed him the neatly gathered pile of papers. As she extended her hand, Michael looked down and suddenly noticed a small but significant detail on her wrist. A gold bracelet gleaming in the sunlight. He froze. That was the bracelet he had given to Kate, the woman he once loved, a long time ago. The bracelet had a special engraving, a mark unmistakable. It was a gift he had given Kate during the beautiful days when they were still together, before he walked away. The emptiness inside him grew stronger. This bracelet, a relic of love from the past, was now on the wrist of this little girl. A girl he had never known. Could this girl be his daughter? Michael stood frozen on the sidewalk, holding tightly to the papers the little girl had gathered for him. But he no longer paid attention to them. All he could feel now was a lump in his throat and an unfamiliar sensation, as if everything in his world had suddenly become hazy. His mind was in turmoil. He couldn't stop thinking about the gold bracelet the little girl wore on her wrist. He immediately recognized it as his family's heirloom bracelet, a gift he had given to Kate on a day filled with love and hope. Before he decided to walk away from her, before he ran from responsibility and fear. Lily, the innocent little girl, had no idea what was going on in Michael's mind. She smiled up at him, her eyes as clear as a quiet lake, as if nothing around her had changed. She blinked, then reached out to take the papers from Michael's hands. "Thank you, Lily," Michael stammered, though he didn't actually know her name. A strange feeling rose in his chest, as if a part of him had been turned upside down and couldn't be put back together. He looked at the bracelet once again, then back at the little girl's green eyes. The confusion he felt was impossible to explain. She smiled again and repeated, "Mom says this bracelet belongs to my dad, and now it's mine. She said my dad really loved her, and he gave her this bracelet when she was young." Michael felt his head spin, unable to say a word. The gentle presence of the little girl seemed to pull him out of his swirling thoughts. Her words cut through him. My dad. That was a phrase he never expected to hear. Your dad. Michael choked out, trying to remain calm. What's your mom's name? The little girl looked up, her clear eyes full of trust, gleaming with endless faith. My mom's name is Claire. She's really nice. She always says my dad is a good man, but just a little scared. She says my dad has to be strong, but he hasn't been here. Lily's words were like a slap in Michael's face. Claire. That name hit him like a lightning bolt, leaving him stunned. He couldn't believe it. 5 years after walking away from her, he was hearing about her through the words of a child, the child he had never known. Lily continued to innocently talk about simple things in life, about the cookie her mom would buy her, about her favorite toys, but all Michael could hear was an echo deep inside his mind. How could this be? How could he have let go of everything? He had a family, a daughter, and now, here he was facing the truth he had tried so hard to deny. Lily cheerfully tugged at Michael's hand, not understanding the turmoil inside him. She led him into a nearby cafe where her mother was inside. Michael no longer heard the noise of the city. Everything became quiet, and only the sound of his footsteps, with Lily, echoed on the sidewalk. The little girl pushed open the cafe door and ran inside, shouting, "Mom! Mom! This is the man I helped pick up the papers." Michael followed slowly, feeling as though he were walking in a dream he couldn't escape. The cafe was cozy with wooden tables and a pleasant atmosphere. Coffee was being brewed, and the scent of milk and strong coffee filled the air. Michael saw a woman standing near the counter, her long, slightly curly hair and graceful figure. She was bending over, rummaging through her purse. But when she looked up, her eyes met Michael's, and everything seemed to stop. Claire looked at Michael slowly, her eyes showing surprise and a hint of skepticism. She stood there silently, not speaking, just looking at him as if trying to read him. Michael felt his heart race. He couldn't believe this was the woman he had left behind, the mother of his daughter, the one he had never seen again since the day he walked away. "Michael," Claire said softly, her voice not angry but filled with surprise and a hint of coldness. Michael looked into her eyes, feeling numb inside. "Claire, I don't know where to start." But before he could say anything else, Lily excitedly told her mother that she had helped a man outside, and that the man strangely knew her name and the bracelet she wore. Claire looked down at the bracelet on Lily's wrist, then her gaze lifted to Michael's. "My sister told me that you'd come back one day," Claire said, a faint, sad smile appearing on her lips. "But not like this. Not in this way." Michael felt a lump in his throat. He couldn't deny the truth that Claire had just spoken. He wasn't prepared for this moment, the moment when he had to face the woman he had abandoned and now face the daughter he never knew he had. The story was just beginning, but one thing was undeniable. Michael had returned. And now he had to confront the mistakes he had made. Michael stood there in the cozy cafe facing Claire, the woman he had abandoned 5 years ago. The suffocating feeling in his chest almost made it hard for him to breathe. Every word from Claire felt like a knife twisting into his heart, reminding him of everything he had rejected. A family, a daughter, a future he could have had. He had once thought that leaving was the only way to protect them, but now he realized that what he had abandoned was his own happiness. Claire was no longer the woman he had once loved. At least not in his eyes at this moment. She had changed not just in appearance, but emotionally as well. Michael looked at her, sensing the distance and coldness in her eyes, though she hadn't spoken a word. Claire's gaze was both a question and a warning. Every time her eyes met his, he could feel the pain he had caused her. This feeling wasn't new, but it was stronger than ever. Michael had grown accustomed to running away from his emotions, but now he couldn't do that anymore. He couldn't run from Claire, from Lily, from the very family he had left behind. This made him feel utterly lost, as if he had lost something so important that he couldn't find it again. "I know I left," Michael spoke up, his voice hoarse. "But I can't change the past. I just want to start over." Claire didn't respond immediately. She just looked at him, her eyes holding a deep sadness that seemed to have etched itself into her soul. After a moment of silence, she finally spoke. "Michael, you left without an explanation. You didn't just leave yourself, you left everything. Me, Lily, and the child you never even knew about." Claire's voice suddenly softened, but it was full of hurt. She didn't shout or get angry, but her words were enough to make Michael feel the weight of all the pain she had endured. Michael lowered his head, unable to meet her gaze. Claire's words buried him in a sense of regret. He couldn't say anything more, standing there feeling the silence fill the space around them. He had thought he could move on without looking back, but now he realized that the wounds he had inflicted couldn't heal so easily. As the conversation between the two adults continued in silence, Lily, the 5-year-old girl, remained blissfully unaware. She was playing with cookies, completely oblivious to the tension that hung in the air. As she bounced between Michael and Claire, the atmosphere lightened just a bit, but none of them could easily ignore the truth that Lily had unintentionally brought to light. Michael looked at Lily, and a strange feeling stirred within him. The little girl had no idea about the struggles her mother had endured over the years. She was the result of his decisions, and now she was the strongest reminder of a past he had tried to deny. Lily wasn't just his daughter. She was the bridge between two worlds, the world of Michael and Claire, and the world he had built for himself after walking away from them. Lily looked up at Michael with her wide eyes, as if seeing him for the first time. She felt nothing but curiosity and simple joy. "Mom says Dad is really good. You're going to stay, right?" Lily asked, her sweet, clear voice making Michael's heart ache. Michael didn't know how to answer. He couldn't lie to her, but he also couldn't disappoint her when he couldn't stay. He felt undeserving of her love and even less deserving of Claire's forgiveness. But perhaps if he did nothing, he would never get another chance to make things right. Finally, Claire stood up, her hand still on Lily's shoulder. She looked at Michael one last time and spoke with a firm voice, though not cold. "Michael, I don't know if you can change, and I don't know if I can forgive you. But if you truly want to come back, want to be part of Lily's life, you need to prove it through actions, not just words." Claire turned and looked at Michael one final time before guiding Lily toward the door. "She needs space to understand everything. We need time. Show us that you're not giving up." Michael stood silently watching them leave, and for the first time in 5 years, he felt a true sense of loss. But he also knew that if he wanted a chance to stay, he couldn't just stand still. He had to change to prove that he was ready to face everything he had left behind. Michael sat silently in the cozy cafe, his eyes following Claire and Lily as they left. The emptiness inside him felt impossible to fill, although the world outside continued its course. Everything in his mind seemed to stop. He had once thought he could easily overlook the past, that he could move on without facing his mistakes. But now, confronted with Claire and Lily, he realized one thing: he couldn't live truthfully with himself if he kept running away. Lily, the little girl he had never known, was the mirror reflecting his fear and regret. How could he ignore such a small being, the result of the love between him and Claire? How could he continue living when he knew he had left behind such an important part of himself? "You can't change the past," Michael told himself. But the part of him that still longed for redemption urged him, "But you can start now. You have to do it." Michael couldn't let things end this way. He began making plans to prove to Claire that he truly wanted to come back. Not just for Lily, but because he had realized he needed a family he had unintentionally abandoned. After a few days of reflection, he decided to go see Claire. He didn't want to just send a message or make a phone call. He knew that if he wanted a chance, he had to do it sincerely, without avoiding anything. Standing before Claire's apartment door, his hands trembled slightly, but he couldn't turn back. He was determined. The door opened, and there stood Claire, her face unchanged but her eyes filled with doubt. "Michael," Claire said quietly, her voice not as cold as before. "What do you want?" Michael took a deep breath and looked straight into her eyes. "I want to talk, Claire. Not about the past. I can't change what I've done. But I want to talk about the future. My future, Lily's, and ours." Claire didn't respond immediately. She just looked at him as if weighing something. After a moment, she raised her hand as if allowing him to enter. Michael stepped into Claire's apartment, and a sense of familiarity washed over him. But it was also suffocating. He looked around, noticing the changes in the space. Everything was a sign of a family that he wasn't a part of. Lily was sitting in the living room playing with toys, laughing with her dolls. The sight made Michael's heart tighten. Lily looked up and saw Michael, and a radiant smile appeared on her face. "Hello, Daddy." Her unexpected greeting made Michael choke up. She said it so naturally, as if he had always been a part of her life. "Hello, Lily." Michael replied, his voice trembling. He wanted to say more, but he could only stand there, unsure of where to begin. Claire saw his embarrassment and awkwardness, and part of her recognized the sincerity in Michael's eyes. But she wasn't ready to forgive him yet. Claire spoke, breaking the silence. "Can you sit down? I don't know where this will go, but I think we need to start with the simple things." Michael sat down, feeling relieved that Claire hadn't shut him out completely. She looked at him for a long time, then continued, "Lily loves you very much, but she also has the right to understand everything. We need time to get to know each other again." After that day, Michael decided he wouldn't just talk, but would take action. He started spending time with Lily, not as a distant father, but as a real father. He took her to the park, taught her how to play soccer, bought her the toys she liked. But more importantly, he didn't miss a single moment. He was always there, always ready to listen and share. With Claire, he also began to change. He didn't just text or call. He actually came to help with the little things in her daily life. He did things he had never thought of: cleaning the garden, fixing a leaky faucet, helping Claire with shopping. Every small action wasn't just about making amends. It was a commitment to rebuild their relationship. Claire wasn't quick to forgive, but she started to notice that Michael was no longer the man he had been 5 years ago, the one who had left and never came back. She saw the changes in him, saw the effort he was putting in, not just for her, but for Lily. One day, Michael received a message from Claire. She invited him to dinner with her and Lily, a simple dinner at their home. Michael knew this was an important step, a chance to prove that he really wanted to start over. At dinner, the conversation was more relaxed than before, without the tension that had once existed. Lily talked about school. Claire asked Michael about work, and Michael listened to them, feeling a part of a life he had long ignored. When the meal ended, Claire stood up and looked at Michael. She spoke gently. "We won't go back to how things were, but if you truly want, there may be a chance." Michael didn't say anything more. He just nodded, but in his heart one thing was clear: he would never give up again. He would stay, and he would do whatever it took to prove that this family was the most important thing in his life. Time passed, and Michael knew that rebuilding his relationship with Claire wouldn't be easy. He couldn't simply use a few words or outward actions to restore what had been lost. Every day, he had to prove that his change was real, that he was no longer the man who ran away from responsibility and love. Work still consumed much of his time, but Michael decided that family would never be a second choice again. He began to rearrange his life, reducing his work commitments and spending more time with Claire and Lily. He didn't just want to be a father. He wanted to become a man Claire could trust. Every morning, Michael woke up early to walk Lily to school, talking with her about the simple things in life that he had never paid attention to before. He taught her small lessons about patience, caring, and values he had long forgotten. Every evening, he helped Claire prepare dinner, sometimes making simple but heartfelt meals. Those moments weren't just time spent with family. They were also moments for Michael to heal his own old wounds. Claire, though, still filled with doubt and caution, couldn't ignore the changes in Michael. She saw that he didn't just visit Lily, but also tried to understand her, better listened to her small needs, and cared about every little detail. Every time Lily smiled, every time she shared a story from school, Michael listened intently, as if it were the most important thing in his day. Yet Claire couldn't forget the pain of the past. The nights she spent awake worried, the days she raised Lily alone, without Michael by her side. All of that was still vivid in her memory. Claire knew she couldn't forgive easily, but she also understood that the change Michael was showing was real, and at least she could give him the opportunity to prove it. Every evening, as they sat down for dinner together, Claire would often look at Michael silently, observing the small things he did for Lily and for her. She didn't say anything, but deep inside she realized that a part of her was beginning to open up, a part that had long been shut off because of the pain and hurt. Lily, the innocent little girl, was the bridge between Michael and Claire. She didn't know about the arguments, the pain in her parents' past. To Lily, everything was still simple and full of hope. Every time she saw Michael next to her mother, she smiled brightly, as if her world was perfect again. When Michael asked Lily about school, she talked about her friends, about the new games she had learned, about the songs she liked. She always looked at him with eyes full of hope and trust. "Daddy, can you pick me up from school?" Lily asked when Michael picked her up for the first time. Each question, each simple request from her, made Michael feel a happiness beyond compare. Lily didn't understand everything, but she knew something was changing. She saw her mom and dad laughing more, talking more, and most importantly, she felt Michael's presence in her life. It was a pure trust, a trust that Michael never wanted to lose. One evening, as the light dimmed and the soft glow covered Claire's apartment, Michael sat with Claire in the living room where their old memories had once been kept. The space was silent for a long time, only the quiet hum of life gradually returning to normal. Claire sat across from him, her eyes looking straight at him, no longer cold or tense as before. "Michael," she began, her voice gentle but firm, "I can't go back to the old days. I can't forget what you've done. But if you want to be a part of Lily's life, if you want to be a real father, you have to understand that things won't be easy." Michael nodded, his eyes never leaving Claire's. "I know. I'm not expecting everything to change immediately. I just want to do everything I can to prove that I will never leave again. I'll be here not just for Lily, but for you." Claire looked at him, her eyes filled with understanding and acceptance. "We won't go back to how things were. But maybe, just maybe, we'll find another way to love each other." That day when Michael left, he felt a weight lifted off his shoulders. Though Claire hadn't fully forgiven him, the acceptance in her gaze was enough to keep him moving forward on this journey. He couldn't change the past, but he could do everything to rebuild the future. He had the family he had always longed for, a family he would never give up again. As Michael looked at Lily through the car window, she still smiled and waved at him. He knew that with each passing day, he would take another step on the path to reclaiming happiness. And though this journey was full of challenges, he would never give up. Each day passed, and Michael and Claire slowly rebuilt the connection between them, not with grand words, but with small actions. Michael knew that to earn Claire's forgiveness and trust, he couldn't just rely on empty promises. He had to prove that his change was real and enduring, not a fleeting moment. They started with the simplest of things. Michael always showed up on time when asked to be a part of Lily's life. He took her to school every morning, spent quality time playing with his daughter on weekend afternoons. During those moments, he was no longer the busy man wrapped up in work, but a real father always present when she needed him. And while these actions might have seemed insignificant to Claire, they were the first step in trusting Michael again. When evening came, Michael and Claire would often sit together at the small dining table, no longer making forced conversation. They had begun to share about the days gone by, about the hurts they had caused each other, and the memories of their past. But the conversation was no longer heavy as it had been before. Claire started to realize that Michael didn't just want to make up for his past mistakes. He truly wanted to start over the right way. He listened without judgment, something she had never experienced from him before. One spring morning, when the warm sunlight streamed through Claire's apartment window, Michael arrived to pick Lily up for school just like every other day. However, this time Claire decided to join them. It was a decision she didn't make lightly, but the feeling within her now was openness, not the fear or defensiveness she had felt before. The three of them walked together through a nearby park where the green branches of the trees cast shadows on the path. Lily ran around joyfully oblivious to the serious words spoken by the adults. Michael and Claire, though not talking much, shared a silent understanding between them. These were the first steps, the steady steps they had never taken during the long time before. Michael occasionally glanced at Claire. He knew she still had doubts, but at least she was no longer distant from him. Claire, in turn, didn't feel pressured to forgive him immediately, but she also knew that what Michael was doing was sincere. Though Michael felt he had changed a lot, there were times when fear still crept into him. He feared that one day everything would collapse again, that the trust he was trying to build would once again be threatened. This fear intensified when he saw some of Claire's old friends glance at him with skepticism. They knew the story of his sudden departure 5 years ago, and although they didn't say anything, their attitude made him feel like a stranger in Claire's life. One evening, after a simple dinner at home when the three of them were sitting together on the sofa, Michael decided to speak his heart. He looked at Claire, his gaze filled with determination. "Claire, I know I can't make you forget what I've done. But I want you to know I never meant to hurt you, and I never wanted to hurt Lily. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I hope you can see that I'm trying not just for her, but for myself too." Claire sat in silence for a moment, then sighed. Her gaze was no longer closed off. She could feel that Michael's words were sincere, that he was no longer the man who ran from fear. "You've changed, Michael," Claire said softly, her voice gentler than ever. "And I see it. But don't forget that change isn't just about actions, but patience. And you'll need a lot of patience if you want me to fully trust you again." Michael nodded, understanding that Claire was right. He would need patience. But at least now, he knew that what he was doing was the right thing. He couldn't change the past, but he could rebuild from the small things, from genuine actions. One weekend, Claire suggested a small trip to a nearby park for the whole family to enjoy a peaceful day together. Michael was thrilled, as it was a sign that Claire was starting to open up, no longer hesitant to spend time with him. Throughout the trip, there were no longer those uncomfortable silences. Instead, there were joyful conversations, Lily's playful jokes, and warm moments that Michael felt for the first time. The three of them sat beneath a large pine tree. Lily talked about school, about her new friends, while Michael and Claire sat quietly listening. Though they didn't say much, they knew that being together was all that mattered. It was a moment when Michael understood that family wasn't about perfection, but about something real that he could rebuild. Time passed, and the lives of Michael, Claire, and Lily seemed to be stabilizing. But even though everything on the outside appeared peaceful, Michael couldn't shake the fear that one day everything would crumble. He knew that the past couldn't be easily forgotten, and he had to face the consequences of the mistakes he had made. One evening, after helping Lily with her homework and having dinner together, Michael felt a new sense of unease rise within him. He looked into Claire's eyes, which still held a hint of caution. While they had made a lot of progress, it was clear that Claire's trust in him still had gaps. Michael understood that even the smallest mistake could cause everything to go back to where it once was. Lily was playing happily in the living room, unaware of the worries brewing between her parents. Michael and Claire looked at each other in silence. Michael could feel something in Claire's eyes, a lingering wariness, even though she had given him a second chance. "I know, Michael," Claire began, her voice calm, yet clear. "We're trying, but not everything will be perfect right away. Sometimes I still feel afraid. Afraid that you'll leave again, afraid that what we're rebuilding will fall apart." Michael understood and felt that fear. He couldn't blame Claire for that feeling. Those were scars in her heart wounds that time couldn't erase. "I'm not going anywhere, Claire. I promise," Michael said, his eyes filled with determination. "I left you and Lily once, and I'll never do that again." Claire didn't immediately respond. She simply looked at him, her gaze never leaving him. Her emotions were no longer as simple as they had been in the beginning. She didn't know if she could fully trust his promises, but what she knew for sure was that Michael had changed. She started to see him not just through words, but through actions, through his presence in their lives. A week later, as spring began to turn into summer, Michael and Claire decided to take a walk around the large park on a weekend. This time they weren't walking with any specific goal. Not to solve problems or face challenges. The walk was simply to enjoy their time together, to reflect on what they had been through and what they wanted to build in the future. Lily, as usual, ran around joyfully playing with the dolls she had brought along. Michael and Claire walked side by side slowly, strolling along the path, enjoying the quiet and the fresh air. They didn't speak much, but their presence together was everything. After a while, when they stood under a large tree, Michael turned to look at Claire, his eyes softer than ever before. "I don't know what the future holds, Claire," Michael said, his voice warm and sincere. "But I know that I will always be here, never leaving again." Claire looked at him, her eyes filled with understanding and a touch of surprise. Those words weren't the first time she had heard them, but this time they carried a different weight. She could feel the sincerity in his voice and in his eyes. For the first time, she felt a true sense of relief, a relief she had never experienced in the 5 years before. "You've changed, Michael." "And I see it," Claire responded gently. "But I need time. I need to see this change continue not just through words, but through actions. We can't go back to what we were, but maybe we can create something new." Michael nodded. He understood that things couldn't happen immediately, but he no longer feared the future. He had learned patience, and he knew that the most important thing was presence, effort, and genuine love. Each day as time passed, Michael no longer felt the anxiety about the past. He had proven that he could change. He spent more time with Lily, not just as a provider, but as a real father, someone Lily could feel love and care from. Claire also began to see things differently. Though she still had wounds in her heart, she no longer let those wounds prevent her from moving forward. Every day she looked at Michael and saw the effort, the real change in him. Although she couldn't fully forgive him right away, she started to believe that maybe in the future they could overcome everything together. That weekend, the three of them decided to have a small picnic in the park. A beautiful morning with the sun shining through the thin clouds. Michael, Claire, and Lily sat under a tree eating simple but meaningful food. Michael looked into Claire's eyes, sensing the change in her. He couldn't start everything from scratch, but at least he had found a part of his heart again. The part he had lost over the years. "We have a family," Michael said, his voice deep and warm. "Although everything isn't perfect, we can start over. It's never too late." Claire looked at him, a soft smile appearing on her lips. "You're right. It's never too late. And we will do better for Lily." The three of them sat in silence, enjoying the moment together. Though they didn't know what the future would bring, They knew they had begun rebuilding from the simplest things, from genuine actions and patience. And that was how they moved forward, one step at a time. Summer had finally arrived, bringing with it bright golden sunshine and long, warm afternoons. The surroundings seemed to change entirely, and it felt as though New York City itself had become softer in these days. People stepped outside to enjoy the sunlight, and Michael and Claire, too, felt the sense of relief that summer brought. Lily continued to run and play carefreely like other children, but for Michael and Claire this summer was more special than ever. It was the first time in years that they truly felt the peace of family life, a feeling they had abandoned in the past. Things weren't perfect, but there was a sense of security, a sense of safety that they had never had before. Michael no longer felt the fear that everything would collapse. He had found his place in this family, and he was determined to keep it. They held outdoor dinners together, where soft lights illuminated the garden, and all three of them laughed and enjoyed each other's company. Michael no longer felt strange or awkward. He understood that to keep this family, he not only needed patience, but also needed to be present and genuine. He had to teach Lily how to love and cherish moments, not with words, but through daily actions. Claire began to feel the change within herself. She was no longer haunted by the pain of the past, no longer afraid when she thought about Michael. While the past still lived in her memories, she had learned to live with it instead of letting it control her present life. She no longer blamed Michael or herself. She knew that change could only begin when she was ready to accept it, and that had happened. Every morning when Claire saw Michael and Lily preparing for the day together, she felt a peace she had never known before. Love was not perfection, but acceptance, forgiveness, and facing challenges together. She saw the changes in Michael, but more importantly, she began to see him not just through his past mistakes, but through his efforts in the present. One day, Claire and Michael sat together in the park, a place where they had once had difficult conversations. But today the atmosphere was completely different. There were no longer cracks in their hearts, just a silent understanding. Claire smiled as she looked at Michael. "You've changed a lot, Michael. And I no longer feel as worried as I used to. It feels like we've passed an important milestone." Michael looked at Claire with affection in his eyes. "Thank you for giving me this chance. I know you need time, and I don't expect you to trust me completely right away. But I will always be here." Those words, though simple, were a testament to all the effort Michael had put in. Nothing was easy, but nothing could replace sincerity. Lily, the innocent and joyful little girl, was the glue that bound Michael and Claire together. She didn't understand everything that had happened in the past, but she understood one thing. Her parents were together and loved her wholeheartedly. For Lily, that was the most important thing. She still smiled, still told Michael that she loved him every day, still ran to greet him every time he came home. Those simple moments brought Michael and Claire a deep sense of love. Lily didn't need explanations, didn't need to understand everything that had happened. She just knew that she was an important part of this family, and the love between her parents was something she could feel. Every time Lily said, "Daddy, I love you," or "Mommy, I love you," Michael felt his heart overflow with happiness. He didn't need grand words. Those moments were enough for him to realize that he hadn't missed out on anything important in Lily's life. That was what he had lost for too long. As summer passed, the long days gradually came to an end and fall was approaching. Michael, Claire, and Lily had gradually adjusted to their new life. A life no longer tied to the painful past, but a life they were building from scratch. They knew the road ahead still held many challenges, but they no longer felt afraid. Michael and Claire didn't promise there wouldn't be more difficulties, but they promised to face them together and overcome them together. One beautiful morning, as the sunlight shone on the yellowing leaves falling in the park, Michael sat next to Claire, holding her hand. "We've made it, haven't we?" he asked. Claire looked at him, her eyes softer than ever. "Yes, we've made it. And I believe we'll continue to make it." The ending of this story wasn't the conclusion of the journey, but rather a new beginning. Michael and Claire weren't perfect, but they had learned to love again from the start. And more importantly, they had realized that love wasn't a destination, but a journey. A journey they would walk together, no matter the hardships. In the golden light of the autumn sunset, their family sat together. No need for grand words, just love and trust in each other. They were no longer afraid, and that was the most precious thing they had gained in life.